What's going on, guys? And today I'm talking about the 5 most impactful trades on the NBA since 2010. I didn't want to do the biggest trades or the most notorious, but these are the most impactful trades that happened since 2010. This doesn't mean for the teams alone in terms of what players they got, but what happened to their future and what will most likely happen to them. First things first, let's talk about one of the worst trades in NBA history. This one is known as the Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce trade, where both of them were on the Celtics and then they were traded to the Brooklyn Nets. The exact trade was Kevin Garnett was traded along with Paul Pierce, Jason Terry, and DJ White to the Brooklyn Nets for Keith Bogans, Marshawn Brooks, Chris Humphries, Chris Joseph, Gerald Wallace, a 2014 first-round pick, 2016 first-round pick, 2018 first-round pick, and the pick swap in 2017. Now to break this down a little bit, basically Boston gave up a lot of their veterans to Brooklyn as Brooklyn was trying to go for a championship, mainly centered around Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. Jason Terry was also in this deal to match the salary and also to provide some leadership as well. DJ White was just a throw-in, and in terms for what the Celtics got, most of those players were just to get the salary even, with Keith Bogans, Chris Humphries, Chris Joseph, and Gerald Wallace really not contributing too much. And even though Marshawn Brooks could have been a pretty special player or a decent young guy, he didn't do too much for the Celtics either. The main thing for this trade was a lot of draft picks. The 2014 draft pick was already selected, and you see him on the screen, as James Young. James Young hasn't done too much in the NBA, but he's still very young and pretty decent up-and-coming prospect. However, the other things that are very important are the 2016 pick, which is this year that the Celtics have at number 3, which we still don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to trade it or if they're going to keep it. The pick swap in 2017, which is basically the Celtics get the better of the 2 picks. So if the Celtics have a very good record, let's say 50-32 this year, and the Nets go 15-67, and the Nets end up with the first pick, no matter what, the Celtics will get the first pick, and the 2018 first round pick as well. None of these picks are protected, so that's why the Celtics are able to get amazing picks out of just giving away a couple veterans so that the Nets can win a few playoff games that season. After that season, if not a season or two later, Kevin Garnett was traded away and Paul Pierce left, essentially making this trade one of the worst of all time, as the Brooklyn Nets sacrificed their long-term future until at least 2018 for the fact that they thought they might be able to capitalize and get a nice championship ring with a couple 35-year-old guys, and this never truly happened. Moving on next is one of the bigger trades we've seen in recent years in terms of how the salary cap affects teams, and this is the James Harden trade. Now this was a very interesting trade at the time, as both James Harden and Serge Ibaka needed contract extensions, or the contracts were soon running out, so the Oklahoma City Thunder had to decide between those two of who they wanted to keep. They ultimately kept Serge Ibaka and traded away James Harden, and this ultimately was one of the worst deals of all time. However, this has panned out much better than it first looked, as James Harden, even though he's became a superstar and second in MVP voting a year ago, the Thunder got enough back to not justify this trade, but to make it somewhat decent. Of course, this trade was James Harden was traded alongside of Cole Aldrich, Daquan Cook, and Lazar Hayward to the Houston Rockets for Jeremy Lamb, Kevin Martin, a 2013 first-round pick, 2013 second-rounder, and a 2014 first-round pick. Now to go through this a little bit more, the Thunder gave up basically only James Harden, as the other guys in Cole Aldrich, Daquan Cook, and Lazar Hayward really didn't do too much for the Rockets, and they weren't really special in the league. Of course, Cole Aldrich is still in the league, playing for the Clippers currently, and Daquan Cook and Lazar Hayward are both out of the league, or pretty much a free agent / D-League type of guy. Now, in terms of what the Rockets had to give up, Jeremy Lamb was a very young and very good prospect at this time, as I believe he was just drafted, he was drafted that year, and he was traded away as a really nice looking prospect. However, he didn't do too much in OKC and was then traded to the Charlotte Hornets. In terms of Kevin Martin, he was a guy who was also supposed to fill up the points that James Harden had. where James averaged, I believe, around 16 points per game for the Thunder in his final year there. So they thought he'd be a decent guy to have. Even though he really didn't have too much of a future there, he had a couple decent seasons with them before leaving and going to Minnesota. Now, the other important parts are the picks. So far, the 2013 pick ended up becoming Steven Adams, who is actually a very solid NBA player as of right now. He is no superstar, but he's a very solid guy you can build your team with, as a really nice garbage big man who can get some blocks, get some rebounds, and finish around the rim. Of course, it's not everything you want, but he is still a very talented player that almost anyone would like to have on their team. The second round pick became Alex Abrines, who wasn't much, and 2014 pick became Mitch McGary. And even though McGary isn't done much yet, he's still a very talented and skilled young big man, and hopefully he can become something special. Now, this is a pretty disappointing trade for the Thunder, as they could have had the second in MVP voting 2 years ago, or last year, my bad, and one of the best scorers we've seen in the past decade. However, they need to trade him away for salary cap reasons because their coach, their owner did not want to go into luxury tax. This is a huge mistake by them. However, you never know what could have happened. James Harden could have become a huge ball hog, as he currently is in Houston, and could have destroyed the chemistry and ending OKC entirely. We don't know if Kevin Durant is leaving, but if that happened where the chemistry completely faded, you can pretty much make it official that Kevin Durant would have left. So this is a huge question mark and one of the biggest what ifs of all time in terms of the NBA. Because if they never traded him away, could the Thunder really win a title the next year? Would Steven Adams even been a relevant player in Houston? And would have Houston even been relevant, as they were a mediocre team, sitting around the 7th or 8th seed every single year, and usually out of the playoffs, if not in the 7th or 8th seed. So they did help propel their future, but we really don't know what happened. Up next is a trade that shows how much you need to know about protected picks. This trade went down, and at first, if you actually went back to the day and thought about it, this was a pretty much meaningless trade. The trade was the Los Angeles Clippers traded a future first-round pick alongside Baron Davis for Jamario Moon and Mo Williams. Now, to break down what was happening, this is when Blake Griffin was still a rookie, and he looked like one of the better players in the NBA as a very athletic, lob catching, rebounding, scoring big man. The thing was, Baron Davis wasn't doing too much for them, so they wanted a better point guard, and Mo Williams was that. So what they did is they traded a first round pick that they didn't expect to beat too much, as I believe they were around the 7th worst team at the end of the season, so giving up basically the number 7 pick for Mo Williams to help Blake Griffin develop. This didn't seem like such a bad trade, as because of the fact that, you know, it's a number 7 pick, and you might not be able to get a guy who can help out Blake Griffin at that spot. Of course, it's better for the youth movement. However, this is not what happened. Instead, this first round pick ended up becoming Kyrie Irving, as the Cleveland Cavaliers ended up picking up basically Baron Davis and Kyrie Irving for just giving up Mo Williams. Mo Williams is special in the late 2000s and like about 2009, where I believe he was an all-star that year, but he hasn't been really anything special besides dropping, I think he had 51 points or 50 points for the Timberwolves one game a couple years ago. But this ended up becoming one of the most impactful trades, as this is right after LeBron left, and while they really didn't have a superstar for about a year, they ended up picking up Kyrie Irving, a guy who you can build your franchise with and around. And so this is really what started bringing back Cleveland, and possibly the reason why LeBron came back was that there was legitimate talent on the team, starting with Kyrie Irving, of course, and then building around the likes of Tristan Thompson and getting the picks and Bennett and Wiggins, good enough to trade for Kevin Love and bring LeBron back home. Without this trade, you never know how special both the Clippers and the Cavaliers could have been. The Cavaliers could have been in mediocrity for so much longer, as their pick ended up being the 4th pick, I believe, which was Tristan Thompson. And if the Clippers kept their pick, they could have had a team centered around Kyrie Irving, Eric Gordon, and Blake Griffin. And they still could have traded some pieces away that would have been the Chris Paul trade to pick up some other special young players. So this is one of the greatest what ifs in NBA history. But the biggest what if of all time has to be the Chris Paul trade. Now, this was never an official trade, but this is probably the most impactful trade of all time that never happened. If you don't remember this was a trade that actually officially went down that would have sent Chris Paul to the Lakers. However, David Stern vetoed it for basketball reasons, for that no one was really too sure what he was talking about. I believe at the time the Hornets were still owned by the NBA, so they wanted to always have the best for their team, so they vetoed a trade so that they could keep Chris Paul. Now, this is one of the most impactful trades of all time, as not only did it affect the futures of many franchises, but players as well. The trade basically centered around Chris Paul would be sent to Los Angeles, as Pau Gasol would be sent to Houston, and Kevin Martin, Luis Scola, Lamar Odom, Goran Dragic, and a first-round pick would be sent to New Orleans. Basically, what would happen was Pau Gasol would be torn away from one of his best friends in the league, and Kobe Bryant, and be sent to Houston, as a mid-30s guy would have to bring Houston some success. For Los Angeles, they'd finally get a great point guard on their team that they haven't had truly since Magic Johnson. Throughout the years, Kobe has really never had a great point guard on his team to help him lead him to success, and they thought Chris Paul would be the perfect answer to this. And with Andrew Bynum being an up-and-coming superstar, this would be the ultimate team that could have won the West for years. However, this trade was vetoed, and basically the NBA really didn't want the Hornets to end up with just a bunch of young pieces that might have not really been worth much. But looking back on this trade, New Orleans got some decent prospects. Kevin Martin was a very solid scorer, averaging 20 points a game throughout many of his seasons in the NBA. Luis Scola, even though not being an elite defensive player, was always a pretty good rebounder and low post scorer. Lamar Odom was one of the better ball handlers for a big man in the league, a prototypical point forward after winning 6th Man of the Year. Goran Dragic was never an all-star, but did make the All-NBA third team one year, becoming a really good point guard that you can help out any team. And that first round pick, we don't really know too much about what it could have become, especially with the impact of these players going to other teams. But in the 2012 draft, I believe this is supposed to be for, that could have still been a decent player. So even though this trade never went down, it altered the future of many franchises, and in terms of Lamar Odom is the guy who I was mentioning about the player. He became very upset at Los Angeles for this, and essentially forced his way out of there, before I believe he ended up in Dallas for a little bit. And this really made him completely lose everything and get out of the NBA entirely. So even though this trade never went down, this had one of the biggest impacts in the league for quite a while, both on players, teams, and futures. Now going to probably the biggest trade we've seen, at least I've seen, that I can really remember, is the gigantic Dwight Howard mega deal. Now this trade was a 4-team trade between the Magic, the Lakers, the Nuggets, and the 76ers. Everyone was trading away some big pieces and hopefully trying to get some stuff back to build their team around. Now let's get started with all the trades. Andrew Bynum was traded by the Los Angeles Lakers to the Philadelphia 76ers. The Denver Nuggets traded Aaron Aflalo, Al Harrington, a 2013 second-round pick, a 2014 first-round pick, to the Orlando Magic. The Los Angeles Lakers traded Christian Nyanga, Josh McRoberts, a 2017 first-rounder, to the Orlando Magic. The Magic traded Earl Clark, Chris Duhon, and Dwight Howard to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Magic traded Jason Richardson to the Philadelphia 76ers. The Philadelphia 76ers traded Andre Iguodala to the Nuggets, and the 76ers traded Maurice Harkless, Vucevic, and a future first-rounder to the Orlando Magic. There was also some pick swaps going around, but nothing too major about that. However, for all 4 teams, this changed their future forever. And the thing about it, most of these teams didn't benefit off of this. The Lakers did get Dwight Howard, but he only stayed for a year before leaving for Houston. In terms of the 76ers, again, Andrew Bynum, he never did anything for them, didn't play a single game, and essentially just ruined his entire career afterwards. The Nuggets did get Andre Iguodala, and I believe they won their franchise best 57 wins that year. However, he soon was traded to the Golden State Warriors and won a title and possibly 2 almost immediately after that. And for the Orlando Magic, they lost one of their biggest players in the franchise and got a bunch of small pieces back and are still trying to rebuild from it. Now let's go a little bit further and how it impacts everyone. Now, you see, this was a huge trade for everyone. In terms of the Philadelphia 76ers, again, Andrew Bynum, they try to move away from Andre Iguodala as the fans really weren't liking him, as he wasn't really a scorer but an all-around player, really good defensively and almost anything on the court. However, they wanted someone better, and at this time, Andrew Bynum was the second best center in the league right behind Dwight Howard. He looked very, very talented, so they wanted to get him. Essentially, they gave up a lot of, almost their entire future, besides I think Drew Holiday was the only guy, and maybe Thaddeus Young, were the only guys that they really kept. And they tried to build around Andrew Bynum. However, Bynum had a bunch of injuries to his knees. You might remember the bowling incident, where he claims he hurt his knee while bowling, and essentially ended Philadelphia's future. This is, at least in my personal opinion, the reason why the Philadelphia 76ers went to the huge rebuild tanking process for the past couple years. This trade happened in 2012, and if you don't remember, Sam Hinkie came in at 2013, just about a year after this. You see, this trade essentially told the 76ers that they really couldn't build around what they were doing now. So by bringing in Sam Hinkie, they stripped it all down. Basically, if this trade never went down, Sam Hinkie would have never became a general manager and would have known as trust the process. The Sixers might have still been a pretty solid team with Thaddeus Young, Drew Holiday, Evan Turner, and Andre Iguodala. And because of this, the Warriors might have never won a championship, because you never know. Andre Iguodala may never would have forced his way out of the Nuggets, and he may have never made it to the Warriors, and the Warriors may have never won a title. Now going to the next team on the list, the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers gave up Andrew Bynum, which in retrospect isn't really too much, as he never did much after leaving the Lakers, for Dwight Howard, a guy who came in there and he was supposed to be a part of a super team alongside Pau Gasol, Kobe Bryant, Metta World Peace, and of course Steve Nash. All these players were supposed to bring Los Angeles a title, which they haven't seen in years, and it really never panned out. Dwight Howard had huge issues with Kobe Bryant and other players on the team, including Steve Nash, and he left shortly after, making the Lakers essentially see this trade as a huge failure. Going to the Denver Nuggets, they did have a pretty solid season a year afterwards, picking up Andre Iguodala and building with him. However, he left and got traded shortly after, essentially making their trade pointless to them as well, giving up some young guys and Aaron Aflalo and draft picks that could have been special to them, but was really nothing. No positive came for them. And finally, the Orlando Magic. For quite a while, it seemed that the Magic were the biggest benefiters, or the ones who won the trade, but we really don't even know that. Sure that they weren't the ones who got screwed out of the most, as Dwight Howard was going to leave anyways, most likely to the Nets, if you don't remember at that time. But a lot of the guys haven't panned out. Vucevic is very special, and they did get a few first-round picks, but a lot of the guys they got really didn't pan out, such as Maurice Harkless and Jason Richardson, as Richardson was pretty old at the time. Actually, my bad. Jason Richardson was traded to the 76ers. I thought that they traded him back. Anyways, Maurice Harkless really didn't do too much. He was traded to the Trailblazers about a year ago. So they really only got Vucevic, who is still a pretty solid starting center in the league, but nothing really happened from this. Essentially, this is the biggest trade of nothingness. This trade caused so many things to happen, whether it be on the Lakers, the Nuggets, the 76ers, and the Magic, where it looked like the biggest trade of all time, but it truly wasn't. This was probably the most overhyped and one of the worst trades for everyone involved, but this has the biggest impact, showing you can't just try to build super teams in Los Angeles because it will truly fail, or the fact that trying to build around young pieces that you pick up off the scrap heap in a trade might not work. But trying to pick up a young superstar that had a lot of issues off the court, it won't always help you. And of course, success is short-lived, as yes, you might win 57 games, and your coach might win Coach of the Year that year, but soon after, you will get blown out, and your team will become soon irrelevant. Anyways, guys, that is the 5 most impactful trades that have ever happened in the NBA, or of the past 5 years or so. Thank you guys for watching. Of course, please give me a thumbs up down below if you like this. Comment down below any other trades I might have missed or other things. I was thinking about maybe doing the Steve Nash Phoenix to LA trade included in this, but I don't feel it's as impactful as some of the other ones. Subscribe for more NBA content and share with your friends. Thank you guys for watching, and of course, have a good day.